It's 6 p.m. here in Korea. Welcome to our newscast. I'm Daniel Che. Let us first begin with the headlines. President Park Geun-hye nominates a new prime minister and deputy prime minister to help overcome the current crisis stemming from the Choi Soon-sil scandal that's rattled the nation. The three opposition political parties harshly criticized the president's desperate unilateral move and vowed to boycott the confirmation hearings for the nominees. With the evidence in the case piling up, prosecutors request an arrest warrant for Choi Soon-sil on multiple charges while further questioning a former presidential secretary. President Park Geun-hye has named a new prime minister and a new finance minister who also serves as the deputy prime minister. This comes in response to calls to overhaul her administration in the wake of the power abuse scandal that's shaking up the political arena and angering the public. Song Ji-sun starts us off with the move that's not expected to have the desired effects.
Just 3 days after replacing key aides linked to the Choi Soon-sil scandal, President Park Geun-hye has named a new prime minister and deputy prime minister in an effort to set up a new and more balanced cabinet to carry her administration through the remainder of her term. Kim Byung-jun, a professor at Kookmin University of Public Administration, who once served as the policy chief to the late President Roh Moo-hyun, is the nominee for prime minister.
We expect the nominee to fulfill his role as Prime Minister, meeting the public's needs with policies catering to the people from their perspective. He's the right person to overcome the current crisis and lead the cabinet for the nation's future.
Meanwhile, current Prime Minister Hwang Kyo-won canceled a planned handover ceremony on Wednesday to take care of state affairs because the Prime Minister nominee will have to undergo a parliamentary confirmation hearing before he can take the post. Financial Services Commission Chairman Im Jong-beom was named to replace Yoo Il-ho as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. The presidential office said Im, with his depth of experience in both the public and private sectors of finance and the economy, is the right person to carry out the government's major reform drives. President Park has also named former Vice Minister of Gender Equality and Family Park Seung-ju to serve as the new Minister for Public Safety and Security, based on a recommendation from the new prime minister nominee. President Park's designation of a liberal prime minister could mark the beginning of a politically neutral cabinet in which the new prime minister would have greater power over domestic affairs and the head of state could focus more on external affairs like diplomacy and defense. Now all eyes are on how the two will organize the power structure, with Kim saying he will outline the details at a press conference on Thursday. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
To no one's surprise, that unilateral and sudden decision drew nothing but anger and criticism from the National Assembly. The opposition parties say the move shows President Park doesn't understand the public's will, and they vowed to boycott the confirmation hearings for the nominees. Park Ji-won zooms in on the responses from the parliament.
Korea's three main opposition parties are lambasting President Park Geun-hye for deciding to nominate a new prime minister without consulting them. In a meeting of opposition floor leaders on Wednesday, they said the move goes against her ruling party's proposal for a coalition cabinet, and they vowed to boycott the confirmation hearing for the prime minister nominee.
How could the presidential office even think about resolving the current crisis without consulting the opposition parties? The president has decided to ignore the public's will and continue her unilateral way of managing state affairs. We cannot accept this cabinet reshuffle.
Based on the outcome of the general election in April, it should be impossible to appoint a prime minister without the approval of the opposition bloc. But the presidential office has picked a fight again. The Justice Party rejects the president's nomination.
Ahn Chol-soo, the former minor opposition People's Party leader and a potential presidential candidate in 2017, said President Park has insulted an angry public.
President Park Geun-hye should step down immediately. You are no longer the President of the Republic of Korea. You don't have the right to destroy the Constitution. You have no right to trample on people's pride and esteem.
Heavyweight politicians from the president's ruling Saenuri Party were also critical of the surprise nominations.
The unilateral announcement, made without any prior consultation with the opposition, only demonstrates the president's continued lack of communication.
Meanwhile, Saenuri Party leaders, who have been under increasing pressure from people in and outside of the party to step down, have refused to resign. With the scandal escalating by the day, the public seems to be losing faith in the presidential office, with recent polls showing that 8 out of 10 respondents think that the president should also be subject to investigation. Whether the changes will depend on the next steps taken by both the presidential office and the parliament. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
It's about time. Prosecutors have requested an arrest warrant for Choi Soon-sil. The charges against the woman at the heart of the shocking scandal, including wrongful exercise of authority as an accomplice. Lee Min-young has the latest from the ongoing investigation.
Prosecutors have issued an arrest warrant for Choi Soon-sil, the woman at the center of the scandal that rattled the nation, on 2 charges: being a party to a crime of abuse of authority and attempted fraud. Choi is suspected of having used her ties to the president to interfere in state affairs and access classified presidential office documents. She also allegedly used her connections to solicit and embezzle a massive amount of corporate donations for 2 government-linked foundations. She has reportedly denied all the allegations against her and claimed she never exploited her relationship with President Park. The latest development came Wednesday morning when state prosecutors reported they have found evidence that Choi received around $3 million from Samsung Group last year through Videx Sports, a company she established in Germany. Prosecutors say Choi used the money to buy a horse for her daughter, Jung Yura, who is a dressage rider. Prosecutors say they will soon call in Samsung officials as well for questioning over the matter. They have also found evidence showing Choi may have forced other Korean conglomerates to donate funds to the 2 foundations. Also on Wednesday, prosecutors questioned Ahn Jong-beom, the former presidential secretary for policy coordination, who they believed is tied to the 2 sports foundations.
I feel remorseful. I will take responsibility for whatever I've done wrong. I will tell the prosecutors everything.
Choi has denied any link to Ahn, and Ahn had previously denied all the charges against him, saying that he didn't know Choi. But with the scandal escalating by the day, there have been numerous reports saying that he was deeply involved in the fundraising process for the 2 foundations. The investigation is likely to focus on how the 2 foundations in question were set up and whether Ahn used his position as a presidential secretary to help Choi secure large corporate contributions for the foundations. Lee Min-young, Arirang News.
Stepping aside from the Choi Soon-sil scandal for now, North Korea could be getting ready to launch another mid-range missile, according to a South Korean government source and U.S. officials. The speculation is that the launch is imminent and could be aimed at sending a message or causing a stir just in time for the U.S. presidential election next week. Connie Kim shares with us some analyst views on the matter.
North Korea may be preparing to launch another ballistic missile soon. A South Korean government source said on Wednesday that movement pointing to an intermediate-range Musudan missile being loaded to a mobile launcher has been detected. The source also said the missile is expected to be launched from the Panghyon airport in the northwestern city of Gusong, the same area from which Pyongyang launched its last missile deemed unsuccessful in October. The North, however, is yet to declare a no-sail zone off its east coast. A no-sail zone declaration is generally expected by Pyongyang prior a missile launch. Seoul's Unification Ministry, however, declined to reveal specifics.
It's classified information, so I cannot reveal any specifics. The government is monitoring all possible means of provocation as of now. We are fully alert.
Hints of North Korea's missile launches also came out from Washington. Citing 2 U.S. officials with knowledge of the issue, Fox Business Network reported Tuesday local time that the regime is preparing to launch an intermediate-range Musudan missile in the next 24 hours to 72 hours. The officials did not specify what satellite imagery might indicate a launch was imminent, and the U.S. Department of Defense has declined to confirm the report. If a launch goes ahead, it would mark the regime's 9th Musudan missile launch this year. So far, the North's only intermediate-range ballistic missile launch success came in June. The Musudan missile, with a range of some 3,500 kilometers, is a growing threat as it would put the U.S. base on the Pacific island of Guam within striking distance if it becomes operational. Pyongyang has a record of launching provocations around key anniversaries, but some North Korea watchers say the next provocation could be timed to coincide with the upcoming U.S. election next week. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
The United States and China have agreed to expand practical cooperation on regional and global challenges. The decision was made after National Security Advisor Susan Rice and Secretary of State John Kerry met with China's State Counselor Yang Jiechi in New York on Tuesday. According to the White House, the two sides decided to deal with the differences constructively and reviewed bilateral progress in bringing about a more durable, stable, and productive relationship. Also in the Big Apple, the UNSC is still drafting a new resolution on North Korea's latest provocations, which is why observers believe Tuesday's meeting included negotiations on the level of sanctions to be imposed on Pyongyang, as Washington and Beijing have different stances on the issue. Global investment banks warn South Korea's fourth quarter growth could take a hit due to the country's recent political climate. According to international firms such as Citigroup, Barclays, and Credit Suisse, the political uncertainties caused by the Choi Soon-sil scandal on top of recent events such as Samsung's Galaxy Note 7 recall, the Hyundai Motor Union strike, and the adoption of new anti-graft law have increased the risk of an economic slowdown. They've also expressed concerns that the latest political scandal will delay passage of the government's 2017 budget plan, ultimately slowing down the ongoing corporate restructuring drive. Korea's top 5 conglomerates are taking up an increasingly larger portion of the gains made by the country's leading 30 business groups. According to market researcher CEO Score on Wednesday, last year, the nation's top 5 companies accounted for over 95% of the net profit made by the group of 30. That marks a significant increase from a decade ago when it was 59%. On the other hand, sales posted by the 5 groups, Samsung, Hyundai Motor, SK, LG, and Lotte, were just over 61%, increasing just 2 percentage points from 2005. Among the 5 conglomerates, Samsung and Hyundai Motor were the dominant players in net profit, making up nearly 60% of the group of 30. Around a week from now, we'll know who the next president of the United States is. For now, with the race entering its final stretch, a number of polls show Republican nominee Donald Trump has the momentum. But a leading credit rating agency says his Democratic rival Hillary Clinton could win by a landslide. Kim Ho-kyun helps us paint a clearer picture of how the battle for the Oval Office is shaping up.
Donald Trump has jumped in the polls over the past week, erasing a 12-point deficit in the latest ABC News Washington Post national tracking poll. Conducted from October 27th to the 30th, the poll showed Trump leading Hillary Clinton by 1 point at 46% to 45%, with Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson and the Green Party's Jill Stein taking 3% and 2% respectively. This marks the first time Trump has led that survey since May. Clinton has been dropping in the polls in the aftermath of the FBI's bombshell revelation last Friday that it had reopened its criminal probe into Clinton's use of a private server when she was Secretary of State. However, a model that has correctly predicted the winner of every U.S. presidential race since 1980 paints a different picture. The Moodys Analytics model forecasts Clinton will get 332 electoral votes, while Trump is predicted to 206. The majority of the 538 electoral votes, 270 is required to win the presidency. It picked the improving U.S. economy and the popularity of President Obama as the 2 main reasons. Moody's says the improved economy is reflected by the growth in household income and lower gas prices, and it says Obama's high approval ratings will also play a big role in swaying undecided voters' minds towards Clinton. Kim Ho-kyun, Arirang News.
We now shift our focus to some updates in the battle against ISIS in the Middle East. Iraq's Joint Operation Command says the nation's forces have entered Mosul, a city of over 1 million residents that has been occupied by the Islamic State group for the past 2 years. For details, let's turn to our Yoon Shin.
The operation to drive ISIS out of Iraq has gained ground. Iraqi forces have entered Mosul, the Islamic State group's last major urban center in the country. Iraq's Joint Operations Command said its security forces reached the eastern edge of Mosul on Tuesday.
Our troops have entered the Mosul TV station. The Mosul TV station is very significant. It means the city of Mosul. This is good news for the people of Mosul, indicating that the real operation to liberate Mosul has begun.
Officials say the troops are encountering snipers and landmines as they attempt to drive ISIS militants out of the city. The Iraqi forces include the elite counterterrorism forces, the Iraqi army, and Kurdish fighters, and they are backed by a U.S.-led coalition that provides advisors on the ground and air. The Iraqi government says the number of ISIS forces is estimated to be somewhere at between a few thousand to 10,000. Meanwhile, the human cost is escalating at an unfathomable rate. The Office of the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights said Tuesday that it had received reports that militants had tried to forcibly transfer some 25,000 civilians to locations in and around Mosul on trucks, likely for use as human shields. Thanks to patrolling aircraft, most vehicles turned back, but some did not.
We have grave concerns for the safety of these and tens of thousands of other civilians who have reportedly been forcibly relocated by ISIL in the past 2 weeks.
The fight for Mosul is said to be one of the country's toughest battles since the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. 이은신, Arirang News.
That's all from me for now. More domestic news updates for our viewers in Korea up next, so stay with us. Thank you for watching.
Thanks for staying with us. I'm Devin Whiting with more of your domestic news. Korean stocks plunged today on growing political uncertainties here and abroad, with the benchmark Kospi dropping to its lowest level since July. The main index fell about 28 points, or a little over 1.4%, to close at 1,979, falling below the psychologically important 2,000 mark. Analysts attributed that to the political scandal surrounding President Park Geun-hye's confidant, and in the U.S., a somewhat unexpected resurgence in Donald Trump's campaign to win the White House. Also looming are central bank meetings this week in several countries, including the U.S. The Kosdaq, meanwhile, which features tech stocks, plunged 3.25% to end at 606. Korean retailers are doing a booming business abroad through the internet. Direct sales overseas more than doubled in the first 9 months of 2016 compared to the same time last year, to a total of 551 billion won, or about $480 million US. The country buying the most? China. Kim Yo-sun has the details.
Korea's direct online sales of goods abroad have more than doubled over the past year, with China being the largest customer and local cosmetics being the most popular product. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Wednesday, the amount of direct online sales reached 551 billion won, or about $480 million US, in the third quarter of this year, up 105% from the previous year. Overseas online sales to China jumped 151% year-on-year, reaching $380 million US. Among the products sold, cosmetics accounted for the majority of the nation's total online sales abroad, reaching $354 million US. Meanwhile, analysts say that Korea needs to diversify its target industries in China in order to be successful in the local franchise market. The Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency stated in a report on Wednesday that recent changes in the Chinese franchise market call for Korea to expand business sectors from the current food and beverage industry to education and beauty services. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Staying with the economy, home prices in Korea are expected to fall next year amid a surge in supply. According to the Construction and Economy Research Institute of Korea, prices nationwide are set to dip by 0.8% nationwide compared to this year, with steady prices in Seoul outweighed by a fall in other regions of 1.5%. The decline in prices comes as the number of available homes next year is expected to jump, the biggest rise being in the capital area at over 41%. But in the more immediate future, it's the time of year when Koreans traditionally make kimchi, and compared to a year ago, the main ingredient, Napa cabbage, will be a lot more expensive. The Korea Rural Economic Institute reports wholesale cabbage will cost 42% more this November at 6,500 won per 10-kilogram unit. The institute attributes that in part to this past summer's typhoons and flooding. It expects households will scale down their kimchi making this year in response to the jump in price. And those are some of the stories we're following right now. Thanks for watching. We'll be back at 8 p.m. Korea time. Bye for now.